South India called Kamaraj, and he implemented one of the early food service programs. And the idea was a recognition that if you feed people, you can actually make them intelligent. Right? So it turned out people weren't getting enough protein. So these early food programs gave rise to my parents and someone like me. So you can directly almost trace the invention of email to the fact that I actually came from parents who got fed properly. It's a fact. Think about it. So what Ayyadurai is doing is something very, very significant because it's taking that concept and really leveraging that across India. You're directly supporting that. Now, as Rajiv said, I'm also a systems biologist. So what systems biology is revealing, you see, prior when Watson and Crick discovered DNA, the original theory was that you are your genes. So if you had a gene for cancer, you were destined to have it. If you had a gene for any particular disease. But around 2000, we learned that you're not your genes. It turns out we went into the Genome Project thinking we had about 100,000 genes, and that made us different than a worm, which had 20,000. What ended up happening was, by 2000, we learned we had the same number of genes as a worm. So this led to a field called systems biology, which really said that what really makes us different is not the number of genes, but the environment, the thoughts we think, and those other external factors which actually can turn on genes. So in fact, as I was coming here, I read, if you go to PubMed, it has all the science literature. In fact, last year they did a wonderful study showing that if you actually start looking at this very carefully, that the nutritional things you get, particularly combinations of good nutrition, turn on and turn off genes which affect neurocognitive health, particularly the hippocampus in the brain, which directly affects memory and emotional stability. So when you're giving to Ayyadurai, and what you're doing directly supports that. Now what's interesting with Ayyadurai is that you're not only supporting the feeding of kids, but you're supporting innovation. Because when I went to the kitchen, and I encourage everyone to visit that, and I went to Hubli many, many years ago, but you'll notice that not only are they feeding people, but they're doing something much more interesting. Because of the need to feed people at such large scale, they also have to innovate. Right, so they directly have to innovate. Emily was sharing with me, they have now figured out how to generate 60,000 rotis per hour. Think about that. Not by hand, but doing it through the fact that they have to innovate as a part of servicing this huge demand. So in closing, what I want to tell you is that what you're doing is directly supporting, as you learn, the feeding of people, of youth in India, which is directly affecting their cognitive behavior, which is the basis of education. So everyone wants to do education innovation, but you can't do that without feeding people, right, which directly affects their biology. So what you're doing is a very, very noble activity, so I want to thank you for doing that. And I also want to emphasize that you're directly also supporting innovation in India, which is significant. So thank you very much.